The broadcast began without warning. Across thousands of star systems, screens flickered and went dark. Then a single live feed replaced every scheduled program, every private channel, every encrypted data stream. A steel-gray sky loomed over a barren wasteland. Rows of scaffolding stretched across the horizon like industrial ribs. From each structure hung a noose, 60,000 in total, hung in order, perfectly spaced, perfectly measured. Beneath them, human colonists. Men, women, children. Shackled. Dirt-streaked. Silent. No words. No trial. Just a cold metallic voice that echoed through the transmission. By decree of the High Executor of the Zohari Empire, the traitors of Casper 7 are sentenced to final justice. May order endure. Then the machines began. One by one. Then 2. Then 10. Then hundreds. The galaxy watched. Some screamed. Most didn't understand. Some looked away. But the ones who truly remembered Earth, they watched every second. Julian Arden stood still in the center of the Terran embassy on Orvantis, eyes locked to the center screen as the final gallows released. He didn't flinch. His jaw was clenched so tightly his teeth hurt. His fingers dug into the railing, leaving indentations in the alloy. Behind him, the room was silent. No diplomats moved. No aides spoke. The air held its breath. Only after the transmission cut, replaced by the Zohari crest, did someone dare whisper. 60,000, murmured Mirahan, his aide. Her voice cracked. Gods help us. No, Julian said softly. They won't. He turned and walked away. The Terran Council called within the hour. Their faces flickered across a secure channel in the private suite aboard Truth of Terra, Julian's diplomatic cruiser. Gray-haired senators, scarred veterans of the Sol collapse, envoys from the far colonies. They looked hollow. Afraid. You've seen it, said Counselor Brandt. The galaxy has. I saw everything, Julian replied. You're the only voice we have in the Galactic Senate, another said. You must demand inquiry. Punishment. Anything. Julian's gaze didn't leave the screen. And if they silence me? A pause. Then Brandt said, make it loud enough that they can't. Truth of Terra cut through fold space toward Aurelia Prime, capital of the Zohari Empire, and the ceremonial seat of the Galactic Senate. Julian spent the journey in the observation chamber, watching the stars blur into light tunnels. He wasn't a man given to theatrics. But this demanded more than diplomacy. He worked alone, drafting his address. Every word mattered. Every pause had to be deliberate. He sharpened it like a blade. Not with anger, that was easy. But with truth. The kind that cuts deeper. At night he didn't sleep. Instead, he opened the personal archive hidden in the ship's core. A single image remained. His son. Red curls. 5 years old. Laughing, caught mid-motion as if trying to escape the frame. That picture was the last saved transmission from Mars before it fell. Casper 7 had felt just like that. A final image. A dying memory. Another graveyard the galaxy would pretend not to see. Aurelia Prime was a marvel of control. The city was layered like a hive, the Senate towers at the top, civilian commerce and culture spread beneath in perfect, mirrored symmetry. Surveillance drones floated like silver insects above every street. When Julian's cruiser arrived, it was met by 6 Zohari interceptors. No words, just a scan and a command. Diplomatic corridor confirmed. Terran envoy permitted. Step carefully. He didn't reply. Aurelia's surface was cold. Too clean. As he stepped onto the platform, the presence of eyes, biological and digital, was suffocating. The Empire didn't just govern through fear. It engineered it. Waiting for him at the platform was Mirahan. She bowed her head slightly. Her face was drawn, eyes swollen from weeping. They're calling it a deterrent, she said. Zohari state press says the colonists were armed. That they were preparing to rebel. They always say that, Julian muttered. She handed him a data slate. This is the full briefing. You speak before the full Senate tomorrow. Your words will be translated across 138 languages live. Julian tucked it under his arm. Then I'd better not stumble. Mira hesitated, then added, There's something else. You don't have a vote. Only a voice. I don't need a vote, he said, walking toward the Senate hall. I just need them to listen. The Senate amphitheater was vast. Each representative sat in concentric rings, divided by species, faction, or empire. Hover thrones and organic datapods floated in silence. Lights dimmed as Julian entered, drawing every gaze. He stood alone in the central circle, no podium, no shield. The Telari delegation shimmered in translucent robes, unmoving. The insective Voth clicked in disapproval. The Elan, serpentine and graceful, watched with curious detachment. And above them all, wrapped in obsidian robes, surrounded by imperial banners, sat High Executive Veilzarn. His 4 violet eyes blinked slowly. He didn't look at Julian. Not yet. The presiding AI's voice boomed. You may speak. The record is live. Julian took a breath. 1 heartbeat. 2. Then he began. We were told this galaxy had moved past extermination, he said, his voice clear but low. That we had matured beyond the need for genocide to be broadcast. He paused. Silence held. 60,000 people were hanged on Casper 7. Not because they posed a threat, but because they were human. Because they hesitated to leave their homes for your minds. Because they dared to say no. Ripples of discomfort spread through the chamber. Julian continued, his voice growing firmer. You told us Earth's fall was a tragedy. That Mars was a mistake. That Sol was an accident of war. But how many accidents does it take before the truth becomes visible? He pointed upward, to the chamber's upper tier where Zohari delegates watched without expression. We remember Sol. We remember the Purge. And we remember what justice looks like, because it doesn't look like a hanging field. The chamber was utterly still. Far above, Veilzarn leaned forward. For the first time, he looked at Julian. The High Executor didn't speak. He simply smiled. Julian stepped back. His time was up. He said nothing else. He didn't bow. He didn't wait for applause or condemnation. He simply turned and walked out, leaving only his words echoing through the chamber's recording systems. The real battle hadn't begun. But the first blow had been struck. Julian's speech echoed long after he left the chamber. Not through applause, there had been none. Not through outrage, at least, not publicly. But in the quiet nods of delegates, the uncertain glances exchanged across aisles, and the subtle shift in atmosphere across the Galactic Senate. By the time Julian returned to his quarters, reports were already surfacing. A Voth scholar had published a short commentary. The Anatomy of State Terror. A Telari youth collective had posted the phrase, We remember Sol, across public data channels, where it was rapidly flagged and removed. A ripple had started. The question was whether it would become a wave, or be crushed before it could rise. Julian sat across from Mirahan, still pale from the aftermath of Casper 7. She scrolled through reaction feeds on a handheld holo. Most were neutral. Some mocked him. Others whispered support. No official response from the Zohari, she said. But Veilzarn requested time to address the chamber. Personally. Julian didn't look up. Good. You know what that means. I do. He slid a drive across the table. Every name I cited? Verify them. I want that list archived on every major neutral server. If they try to erase the speech, the names will remain. Mira nodded, taking the drive gently. You're not just fighting him, she said. You're forcing the galaxy to choose sides. I'm not giving them that luxury, Julian replied. They've had centuries of neutrality. Now they get truth. The next session began under tighter security. Zohari guards lined the chamber walls. Silent, armed, unmoving. The air itself felt heavier, charged with threat. Julian stood alone again, aware of the crosshairs he likely walked through. Then Valzarn entered. His presence silenced even the AI moderator. Draped in a crimson-black ceremonial cloak, the High Executor moved with controlled arrogance. He didn't speak at first. He simply stood at the center of the hall, allowing the tension to grow. Then he began. "Order is the only constant in a civilized galaxy," he said, voice deep and oddly melodic. "Yet some mistake chaos for freedom, rebellion for conscience, treason for tragedy." He turned slowly, facing the delegates. The Casper 7 incident was not genocide. It was enforcement. The individuals executed were not civilians. They were armed separatists, supported by known terrorist elements. He raised his hand. Images appeared in the air, footage of humans smuggling weapons, installing shield disruptors, stockpiling explosives. A familiar propaganda trick, clean, staged, contextless. Julian waited. Valzarn concluded. "We acted in accordance with the Court Statute 47F, under emergency provision. We did not apologize. We do not regret it. We uphold peace through strength." Then he looked directly at Julian. "Your words, Envoy Ardent, are powerful, but dangerous. And lies, no matter how eloquent, remain lies." Julian didn't respond immediately. He didn't need to. The chamber was already whispering. Delegates from smaller species, those long kept silent by fear, looked uncertain. Some seemed disturbed by the footage, yes, but others studied it with suspicion. Mira leaned close, whispering into Julian's earpiece. "The footage metadata is doctored. The timestamps don't match the actual day of the purge. That was staged after the executions." Julian's jaw tightened. "How sure?" 87%. That's enough to raise questions. But not enough to prove forgery." He stood. "Permission to speak," he said aloud. The AI granted it. Valzarn turned slightly, not surprised. Julian faced the hall. "I do not ask for pity. I do not demand vengeance. I ask for facts." He gestured to the floating holograms. "This footage is an insult. Not just to the dead, but to your intelligence." He projected another image, an orbital scan of Casper 7's execution fields, taken hours before the broadcast. No signs of weapons. No bunkers. No fortified zones. "You claim they were armed. Then why no firefight? Why no damage? Why were the execution zones undisturbed? 60,000 rebels, and not one fired a shot?" He stepped closer to the center. "The truth is this: those people were minors. Their mistake wasn't insurrection. It was resistance, nonviolent, legal resistance, to a forced relocation order made under corporate contract. The Empire wanted that land. They refused to leave. So you killed them." The chamber reacted. The Telari diplomat blinked rapidly, discomfort. Even the cold eland flicked their tail in agitation. Valzarn responded with a smile. Outside the chamber, the Empire struck. That night, Julian's quarters were breached. He had stepped out for a walk through the diplomatic concourse, a calculated risk. 2 guards followed him, discreet and distant. Mira remained behind to prep the next day's files. The explosion took the top floor of the tower. Julian watched it from below, his own name burning across the emergency broadcast. The flames reached into the sky like the fingers of the dead. Myra's body was found near the door, charred but still holding the satchel of encrypted files she never dropped. Julian didn't speak for an hour. When he finally returned to the Senate, dressed in the same half-burned robe, stood on his cuffs, the hall fell quiet. This time, he didn't ask to speak. He walked to the center and placed a sealed capsule on the platform. "This contains the full case for judicial inquiry," he said, voice hoarse. "Not just of Casper 7, but of a broader campaign, a calculated operation targeting unaligned human colonies." He looked up at the dome, directly at Valzarn. "I was almost silenced last night. So was my aide. But the files survived. She made sure of it." He didn't raise his voice. I will name her, in this chamber, before every star. Mirahan. Scholar. Daughter. Martyr. Her blood now joins those on Casper 7. A hush swept through the seats. This is not politics. This is not a speech. This is an indictment. He walked away. The capsule opened behind him, uploading data to every secure console. That evening, an encrypted message appeared in Julian's private channel. No ID. No trace. Just a voice, male, clipped, Zohari accent muted. They planned Casper 7 6 cycles ago. It wasn't about rebellion. It was about minerals. The Black Sun conglomerate paid for the executions. I have proof. Attached was a partial data file. Transaction records. Timestamped. Real. Julian stared at the screen. Hope was not loud. It never had been. Not for humanity. It whispered through cracks. Moved beneath attention. Spoke only when survival demanded it. Julian Ardent saved the file. Encrypted it 6 ways. Sent a copy to the Terran Resistance channel. Another to the Telari First Librarian. Then he poured a glass of water, sat at his desk, and added one more name to his list. Not of the dead. Of the remembered. The chamber doors hissed open. Julian stepped into the Senate Hall, shoulders squared, the burned scars on his face still raw beneath the collar of his diplomatic coat. His entrance halted every side conversation, every whispered translation, every calculation hidden behind alien eyes. He walked slowly, unhurried, unswerving, through the central aisle, past murmuring delegates and cold stares, toward the central platform. He carried nothing but a data slate in one hand and a transparent capsule in the other. Inside the capsule, hard proof. Empire authorizations, bribe logs, execution orders timestamped before the Casper 7 rebellion allegedly began. Evidence that the massacre wasn't retaliation, it was logistics. When he reached the center, the moderator AI's voice rang through the hall. The Terran envoy has the floor. Julian raised his head. The central light shifted to frame him in soft white. He waited until every lens, every eye, every translator drone focused on him. There's no more pretending, he said, voice low and steady. No more images without context. No more statements without consequence. He held the capsule aloft. Holograms flickered above it, documents, transaction logs, sensor data, intercepted messages from Empire Command. These files are certified, cross-verified by 3 neutral species. They show that Casper 7 was not a flashpoint. It was a contract. A calculated extermination approved months in advance to secure mining rights for the Black Sun conglomerate. The colonists didn't die because they resisted. They died because they were in the way. He turned slightly, addressing the rows of species around him. You've seen the gallows. You've heard the Empire's justifications. But now see this. The projection expanded, maps, troop movements, a mineral deposit report filed a week after the massacre. Silence reigned as the images scrolled. Julian lowered the capsule and stepped back. I ask for one thing only, he said. A formal tribunal. Let the evidence be heard. Let truth stand where fear once ruled. From above, High Executor Veilzarn rose from his seat. For the first time since Casper 7, his composure faltered. A tribunal, he repeated. You mistake this chamber for a courtroom. It is not justice you seek. It is spectacle. Julian didn't respond. Veilzarn's voice grew colder. You think to break empires with documents and speeches. You stand here not because you are brave, but because you are tolerated. Barely. He swept a hand across the chamber. The Empire has maintained peace for centuries. And now, because of a mining dispute and emotional appeals, you challenge our very authority? He leaned forward. This is a farce. Julian spoke without raising his voice. I was nearly killed for speaking. My aide, Mirahan, was killed. So if this is a farce, it's written in blood. He reached into his coat and removed a smaller chip. This contains the names of all 60,000 victims. Each name. Each colony ID. Each assigned birth. I will read them now. The chamber shifted. The AI moderator blinked its signal node in confusion. You have 5 minutes of address time remaining, it said. Julian nodded. Then I'll use them wisely. He activated the chip. The air filled with a stream of names. Not a list, each name projected clearly, floating in glowing white script. 60,000. One after another. Julian began to speak. Rian Voss. Age 12. Son of agri-tech workers. Loved building things from scrap. He stepped forward. Elora Cass. 51. Cook. Fed an entire sector during drought season. Another step. Commander Vale Mirren. Former Terran Navy. Retired. Defended Caspar Seven's children with a blunt gardening tool. He kept going. The room was silent. Arlen Jao. Minor. Died holding his wife's hand. He didn't pause. He didn't dramatize. He just read. He read until the eye spoke again. Time expired. Julian stopped. But the names kept appearing behind him, projected by the chip, set on an automated loop. They would continue for the next 14 hours. He turned back to the chamber. You can deny my voice. But not theirs. The Telari Prime stood. Slowly. Ceremonially. Her shimmering blue robe shifted like water. I second the call for tribunal, she said. On behalf of the Telari Accord. Whispers erupted. The Voss soon followed. Then the Elin. Then others. Dozens of factions, some long silent, stood in slow succession. Even those without power stood, not to vote, but to witness. Only the Zohari remained seated. Veilzarn didn't move. His expression was unreadable, but his jaw twitched. The moderator AI's lights pulsed. A majority has acknowledged the call for tribunal. Proceedings will commence within one cycle. Just like that, it was done. Julian left the chamber without fanfare. Outside, rain began to fall over Aurelia Prime, manufactured, scheduled, yet for the first time, it felt real. He looked up, letting the droplets run down his scarred face. Myra's voice echoed in his memory. Make it loud enough that they can't. Back on his ship, Julian received a final encrypted message. From an anonymous source. We hear you. Keep speaking. Attached, a short video, posted on the Elin Youth Networks. It was a clip from his speech. The image of the names streaming behind him. The words, "We remember." Already reposted tens of thousands of times. Already spreading. Change wouldn't come overnight. The Empire would resist. Battles, political and literal, were ahead. But something had cracked. Truth had spoken. And the silence was no longer absolute. Julian sat down at his desk, pulled out a blank page, and began to write again. Not a speech this time. A eulogy. And a beginning.